Hi, my name is Pat Basler. I'm the library director at the Stoughton Public Library. This is our second community forum that we are holding to inform the public of where we are with the Stoughton Public Library building project and to get your input, because before we put this out to bid, if there's any changes or suggestions, we would like to hear from you. We've been working on this project unofficially, really, since 2006. And then in 2011, town meeting voted almost unanimously to borrow matching funds if we got a construction grant from the state. In 2012, we did get that grant for almost $7 million, so we have an almost $14 million project that we are trying to move forward with. Many people ask, why are we doing this project? The building looks really sturdy, it's clean, it's well maintained. Why do we need a new library? This building was built in 1969. It's structurally sound. It's probably one of the safest buildings in the town. But unfortunately, all the tile floors were made in the late 60s with asbestos. And it's in the tile and the mastic, the glue that holds it down. It's also around all the window grout and in other building materials here and there. Nothing is disintegrating yet, but it's only a matter of time, and we've been planning this for almost 10 years, and we are at the right point to start making these changes. The other real shortfall of this building is it's not handicap accessible. We have a freight elevator in the back of the building that it has a heavy door, an accordion grate, and then a floor in the elevator that you can't turn a wheelchair around in, so it doesn't meet ADA code. And we have been continuously, I've been here 19 years, and pretty much for the whole time, we have been trying to address that issue, either by putting a new elevator in or coming up with some other solution. The conflict with putting a new elevator in this building is the back of the building is built into ledge, which was originally dynamited to construct, and the front of the building has no second floor. So you can't just slap an elevator on the side of the building, because if you did it in the front, there would be no second floor, and in the back, there's ledge. So that brings us to today. There's a lot of other reasons that when we had community forums 5 or 6 years ago, some of the other needs of the community were to have more meeting room space. We don't have nearly enough public meeting room space in this town. Thankfully, the new police station has a community room that they share, but we constantly are turning people away from different program options that they would like to hold here. And finally, the building was built before computers became a major part of our life. And as a result, we can only put public computers downstairs around pillars that have electrical outlets, because all the rest of the plugs are along the perimeter of the building on the floor under the shelving. So if we put a computer station next to an outlet, we're blocking bookshelf space. So those are some of the reasons that moved this project forward. We're very lucky to have two great companies that are helping us with the final design phase. Daedalus is the company that is providing our owner's project manager portion of the design, and they represent the town's interests in this building design and building process. And then the architectural firm that won the bid to help us through the final design and construction stage is Finegold Alexander Architects. So Tony Hsiao here is on their staff, and he's been on since day one. We've been meeting every 2 weeks since last January, and he is going to present where we are so far in the close to final design.
Again, Tony Hsiao. I'm a principal and director of design at Finegold Alexander Architects. We have designed libraries probably over the past 30 years in representing over 25 communities across the New England region, particularly concentrated in Massachusetts, the most recent being the one that we had finished at Framingham for the Christopher Coliff Library recently, as an example. But we've done libraries across the Commonwealth, and this is a wonderful kind of project for us to be involved with, and particularly the kind of project like this, which, as Pat has alluded to, has some great bones, but also has some significant challenges. And for us, our charge is to really try to bring a library not only to the 21st century, but to represent for the community a way to create a new home that enhances what the library does so well in support of what the staff does, but also to really bring the kind of programming spaces and the things that the community wants, and to allow things that currently are being sort of difficult here to be addressed. So I'm going to come back to this image in a second, which is about what we're actually doing, and I'm going to explain a little bit what we've done in terms of the planning. So this may be a little hard to see, but I'm going to just walk you through. So this is the front door. It's being redesigned into the library. And on the ground level here, what we've essentially created is a really working through, this is actually the existing, what we call the footprint of the library that exists there now. So in other words, this is actually what you have, but what we're doing is we're enhancing it by adding as a second floor, and we're reconfiguring the entire ground floor outside here. So I'm just going to lead you through what happens here. So when you come through the front door, one comes into this open lobby area. It's a double height space, immediately greeted by circulation desk, which is pulled more towards the central area so that the circulation department can actually see the patrons coming in much more directly, and they can also greet folks who are coming into the library. This area to the left here will be all the sort of new adult materials. There'll be periodicals, newspapers, media. There'll be conference areas, table areas. So in other words, when you come in there right away, for those of you who've been to bookstores and things like that, as you know, one of the things that greets you is often the new collections, the new stuff, right? So people like to see that. So that will become much more visible when you're greeted at the front here, and they'll be comfortable in varied type of seating as well, tables and benches and chairs and couches. As we continue to go here, towards the left, this area here is the young adult. Now, the young adult kind of is sort of just stuffed into an area here at the moment to kind of makeshift. We're finally going to give the young adult here a real area that is going to be their area. So they will have not only the ability to have their collections, we also give them a young adult room. So they can basically have the kind of things and the kind of things that this age group particularly likes. They have the ability to have their own space, but it also can be monitored unobtrusively from the circulation desk at the front, while sort of allowing them to feel like they also have autonomy. So the young adult, for the first time, will have really a space that is geared towards them. Now this whole area, which is in this kind of yellow color, this is the children's area. And as we know, in many cases, and particularly in your community as well, the children's area is the area that's been growing and bursting at the seams. And in fact, that's really where communities find they have a great deal of unmet needs and demand, and as families continue to move into communities like Stoughton and they continue to grow and the kids come to libraries, this is a major, major change. So the children's area alone is probably more than doubling the size that currently exists, which is a really big need, which we're finally able to address. So all of this through here is the children's area, and as you can see here, once you pass the central circulation desk, there's a secondary circulation desk right here, which is geared towards the children's librarian in a way, and so that allows that person to control all of this. So you're going to have areas which have low bookshelves. You're going to have areas where you're going to have, again, different kinds of seating arrangements. You're going to have a children's craft room. There will be areas at the front that could actually be storytelling areas. And all of this will have the ability to also have more natural light and the ability to really take charge of this entire right-hand side of the building and really make a wonderful space for the children. So I think this is another major thing that is occurring here. And then over here in this purple area here, this is part of the adult collection. So as you know, there's a lot of books that are stacking in there. We will continue to have that, so it allows the collection to remain intact, but we're also laying them out more efficiently. But they're also, everything in this library, as Pat alluded to, is being redesigned to deal with accessibility issues. Right now, what happens in bookshelves, the spacing is too tight. So for wheelchair access or just people moving through libraries, we actually have demands which are code-driven in sort of saying you need a certain amount of space between shelves, you need a certain amount of space at the end of shelves, or if someone is in a wheelchair or other kind of things, it allows them to flow a lot easier through a library. This is very critical. So as we renovate a library, we have to make all the standards meet current code requirements, which are generally much more generous than it currently exists. So your library right now, because it doesn't conform for that kind of thing, so it makes difficulty for patrons who have sometimes mobility issues. And there are other issues, not just accessibility, that are also being addressed. But so all the things that relate to stacks and things are also respaced. So there's more generous areas between book areas. And then finally back here, this is continued to be sort of the support areas, their mechanical storage. That will remain. So one of the things in the renovation effort to be sensitive to the dollars is we don't just wholesale rejigger everything. So the mechanical room is at a good location. Utilities tie into there, so we're maintaining that presence of the mechanical room here, but we will be doing all new systems in the library to also make them much more energy efficient. And frankly, also those have to meet energy codes too. So the whole library is upgrading entirely on the systems within. And so what you're going to see here in the view in a little bit is that the front of this library, as it faces towards the Main Street, Park Street, is we're trying to creating a porch. And we're going to create a porch because that's going to allow us to add a second floor. And the second floor, you can just see in the outline, is here. I will point out one other thing. The existing stair that exists there now will remain, but we're going to put new railing systems on it. We're going to refurbish the finishes on the steps and the treads and the risers. So everything will basically be freshened up, modernized, but the stair actually remains where it currently is. But we are also, as Pat said, we are adding an elevator. So we have a real appropriate size elevator right here that will connect the first and second levels and will allow us to basically have the size that we really need. In addition, there will also be some smaller toilet areas here for the patrons, which will be single stall toilets. Again, easily monitored by the circulation control staff here, both for security purposes, but also for the ability to just make sure that people and patrons are using it appropriately. So that also is an addition here that is being shown. As we move up to the next level, so when you come up that stair from below, and as you know from the rear parking lot up at the back, so as we come in through here, this is showing where the meeting room space is that we are in right now. But as we come through here, I'm going to sort of just lead you through and then eventually show you what happens here. So whether you come through here or you come up the stairs, right here, there's sort of this open area. We're going to develop this more as a kind of an informal lounge seating. Could be cafe type thing. Not cafe in a literal sense of serving food, but sometimes patrons bring drinks or they bring things with them or they want to sit on their laptops and they're, like the Starbucks approach. So that will be kind of an informal area for people to do that. And it'll be sort of a nice zone right here that we're creating. The meeting room itself, we're actually rejiggering here some things, and we're actually making it slightly larger. So we're going to have a capacity of 200 people that can be accommodated here. And we're going to make sure that the meeting room itself has state-of-the-art technology. So the things that we're doing right now, projections, audio, video, everything that the current 21st century library demands and also public needs will be accommodated. So all of that is going to be reconfigured with new technology. In addition to that area, we will have a dedicated coat room and a kitchen also, which can be accessed for the library, because we know that Stoughton uses this library meeting space a lot, and they use a lot of different things in here. So the ability to have kitchen, storage, coat room that's properly sized will be added to enhance this use of the space. There will also be, in addition, some smaller sort of conference room areas here, which is just off to the side. And then there's additional kind of areas here that will be used for other program spaces, which could be secondary meeting spaces and or storage. So we're going to have to make sure that we have the ability and flexibility to accommodate a lot of different things, which right now you're doing the best you can within the space you have, but we're going to make this even better. So this space itself is going to be greatly enhanced and will be easily accessible as it is now through a set of doors here, and basically allow this whole thing to become a modernized meeting space. As we move more towards this side, to the right-hand side, if you come in here, this is all the tech support. So these are the people who are actually doing all the back-of-house things, which are so critical to how libraries function. So all the areas that are finally being designed for that group and for that staff is being managed and also programmed so that they can really do their jobs in the best possible way. So they have sufficient space, laid out areas, support areas, so that they can really do the things they need to do to enhance how the library works. So we've created that for them there, and they will have direct loading as they do now from the elevators here and the garage here. So they will continue to have that, and basically comes into, so they have immediate access for book delivery, et cetera, as they process through. There'll also be enhanced public toilets here. So this will be sized to be accommodating really the capacity of the toilets need to be. So instead of just sort of these two sort of unisex toilets which are stuck at the back of the room, we're going to create really decent-sized toilet facilities here, also all of which are handicap accessible as well. So we're going to provide that, and there'll additionally be a smaller toilet, janitor's closet, and the like. As we continue to move down in this direction here, this is where some of the staff area occurs here. So this will be the staff area here. There'll be some things which is, again, related to sort of how they operate. And they also have the ability to gain access. So there's a way to have a kind of secondary way, which is really more support, but it will have the staff to have immediate access for servicing, both tying to tech service here, but also when they need to come out into the main area. Over here, this is where we have, Pat's office, director's office, and also support for Pat. So again, her idea was to really have strong presence, where she will have the ability to also be as part of the adult area. It will be off to one side, so she's unobtrusive, but she has the ability to make sure that the library is working the way it should. So Pat, really, as she is now, will be front and center. So again, she has the ability to really have some way kind of secondary, I would say, soft control over what happens in the library on this main floor. Because what happens here is that this entire area in purple is a new expansion. We are adding a second floor here. So in other words, right now, as you know, when you come in here, you come into this space, and then you go down the stairs, and then that's it. Everything from this point forward is going to be new. And we're creating a large, expansive adult reading area here. So for the first time, we will have really an adult section. It'll have a lot of areas for meetings, a lot of area for conferencing, as Pat mentioned. There'll be secondary quiet study rooms here, a more major conference room here, which can also double for many different uses. There will be areas that will have kind of literacy programs here. And then in addition to that, we also have the idea that this whole thing is very open. This is, as I mentioned, a cutout or hole in that area, which is that double height space to the lobby below. And then along the window wall, which we'll come back to in that rendering from the outside, patrons will basically have all kinds of seating arrangements. There'll be lounge seating, there'll be tables and chairs, there'll be different kind of configurations. So it really allows the patrons to get to natural light. One of the other key things, because the building is half buried in ground, is by coming forward like this, we would really create an open area that also views towards the main street. And as you know, there's a very nice park in the corner here. So we're starting to open up the library towards the outside. And this level from here to here is about a half level up. So that's how we maintain the fairly high ceiling in the first floor area underneath it, and allows us to connect through here this way, but at the same time enhances the fact that all of this is new. And then finally over here, there's a kind of a secondary means of egress. You usually have to have two ways out from a second floor. So this is a secondary stair, only basically to get out when you have to emergency exit out. These are what we call building cross sections. But the most simple one I'm just going to explain here is this kind of cross section here, because that kind of encapsulates the whole thing. So here you see, this is the entry lobby here. As I mentioned, that was the circulation desk. This is the stair that exists right now. And you come up here, and then, of course, this is the secondary entrance from the rear parking lot up here. So here you can see this is all the sort of main lobby area here. And then as you come through this area here, the meeting room is just behind here. Then we go another half flight steps up, and then all of that is the new adult section here. And then if you look at it in the crossways, sort of going the other direction, here you can see the double height space along the entry. And then we have the conference rooms, fictions, adult literacy, and then all of the areas underneath. So this enables us, again, to preserve a fairly high ceiling in the main level, so it feels very generous and welcoming. And then it enables us to enhance the area. And the other thing I'm going to point out is that from an architectural standpoint, as you know, there's this kind of beautiful clear story top light, right, that runs down the middle of this space. So we're actually doing another version of that here. So it's like literally taking that clear story and building it up here. So there are two clear stories that are going to result running right down the middle of the library. So again, that's going to bring a lot of natural daylight into the middle of the library, besides at the perimeter. And then this next series of images, so this is a rendering taken from the entry as you first come in. Here you can see the circulation desk right here. This is that open area that exists right now. Here's that stair that we were talking about that enhances there. This is going to be the area that is going to be the adult periodicals and magazines and newspapers and the like. Children's is to the right here. You can just barely see in this kind of rendering, there's kind of this whole area is the children, and of course it wraps behind the circulation desk. And then here you can start to see the double height space opening up to the adult reading area above, which is all new. And this sort of clear story area is also new. So you can see here it's a nod or a recall to the existing clear story that exists just beyond there. And this is so you can see you come up those stairs, then you come up again these two half stairs, and it allows this whole thing to open up. And then when you get to that reading room up, yes?
Back to that previous one.
Yes.
Is that a skylight?
It's clear story. A skylight means normally it would come from the top down, so it's not a skylight in that sense. Clear story means it's coming from the side. So in other words, this is a solid roof here. Daylight comes from the sides of that. So it's not a skylight, it's what we call a clear story.
So it's open further back?
Yeah, it opens on both sides. So just imagine, like, you know, you have what you see right now. If you go out into your existing space, that's a clear story. So daylight comes from the sides under the roof because the roof is higher, right? Because in the section here, this is how it works, right? Here's the roof, that's a roof. Here's light. Here's light. This is a clear. If it were a skylight, this whole thing would be open from above. That's the difference between a clear story and a skylight. And then as you come up to the new enhanced sort of adult reading area that's all built out as new. So here you can see all of this is built in. So this is adding. The total area of the library is basically changing from about 22,000 existing to just under 32,000. So we're about adding just under 10,000 square feet or just a little over 40%, just to give you an idea of the order of magnitude, how much we're increasing it. But here you can see how the idea is that within this, we want the sense that it's very open, that patrons can do a lot of things. There's a lot of flexibility in the planning library, and we get an ability to have people to come to windows because, you know, people love going to windows, especially when they're reading. So we want to enhance them as much sort of perimeter exposure lighting, but also control for sunlight in terms of the amount of glare and the like. But it allows you to see out as a patron, and you're elevated on the second floor and seeing around it. And here you can see that clear story in this space above the double height space below. And then just beyond here, you see this? This area is the existing clear story that is there right now. So when you come up to this space, you'll actually be able to look through the existing clear story down. So it's going to create a very interesting and open spatial sense in the library as it begins to tie from the existing to the front. And then finally, when looking at this image, so one of the key things that we really looked at, and this is probably the most architecturally challenging part of what we're doing here, is that, as I said, there are good bones in this library. It's a mid-century building done in the 60s. So we're maintaining the existing line of where those walls are, but we're introducing new structure, obviously new systems. We're also going to be recladding the whole library. The intent here is to actually take what is a very types of brick color, metal color, glass color, and we're going to make all of this uniform. So the idea is going to be very light. Essentially what's shown here is sort of kind of an off-white color, and we're even going to paint the brick so that the whole thing of the library is going to read as a whole. So here you can see what I mentioned at the beginning. When you come into the main entry here, the parking lot here will have an enhanced handicap accessible route. So they will be a series of handicap sloped walkways so that patrons can come right into this area. We create this wide swatch of a porch that exists underneath the library expansion above. Here's the main entry in the middle. Also at the corner here, because the site is sort of rising at the corner, we're able to just do a slope walkway with no handrails so that from this corner, which is a busy intersection, patrons can come here and also go in addition to where they come from the parking lot. And then what you see here is that all of the openings that exist now, which are very high in your existing library, if you go out, you can look at that closely. We're opening up all these openings. So you can see here a lot more glass is going to become visible on that ground floor. And then the secondary floor with the new adult area here also will have good expansive windows basically looking out. And then here again beyond that, that is that clear story element on top. So the whole idea in a nutshell is to create a library that enhances the programs that exist, addresses the critical shortfall in terms of the needs, addresses the handicap accessibility issues for the patrons, resolves a lot of the program shortfalls with respect to youth, children's, adult, brings modern technology throughout the library so that every part of the library, not just consolidated a few areas that you currently have right now where computers have to plug in against columns, the entire library will be wired in Wi-Fi and wireless. So every part of the library will have the ability for patrons to do everything they do. And there's still technology that's changing. As you know, people nowadays a lot more using iPads, smart devices, but we're not also having the ability to take away from the traditional experience of just reading a book. So this is, in a nutshell, what we're proposing to do and how we've been working to date.
I thought you mentioned two entrances, one in the corner. I don't see it in
So the main entrance is here, okay? The secondary entrance is here, in back. So the two entrances are at the front, the back.
Go back to your picture of the front, please.
Here,
No, the actual,
the rendering,
yeah.
the rendering,
Right
yep.
there. So that's not an entrance in the,
No, this is not an entrance here. The entrance is all the way back here where your parking lot is now. It's only here and here. And the reason we do this is because also for security purposes, to be perfectly honest, libraries need a single point of entry to control. You need to manage how people come in and out, not only for the benefit of the patrons, But frankly, it's also a way to make sure that the patrons who are coming here have the ability to be at least understood who is coming to the library. So that's very important. So you don't have a sieve with multiple entrances in and out of the building. Questions?
I have some, but somebody else. No?
I didn't see, aside from the enhanced area here, I didn't see any other large conference rooms on that second floor.
Yeah. So this area is a large conference room here. These are 3 smaller quiet study conference rooms there. There's another one here, and then also here. So besides the main meeting room, so there's really 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of varying sizes. Yes.
What about parking?
Okay. That's a very good question. The reason we didn't show the site plan here is because we're still working through it. The idea is we're not going to lose any parking space that you currently have, and we're going to try to add parking spaces to the current count. We know that parking is always a critical shortfall, and we are basically working through ideas, and we're also reviewing with the city what can and cannot be done. So we can't yet state for a matter of fact how many final parking spaces we're at. But we understand very much so that if we can enhance the parking, the driving experience, all of that, we're going to try to do so. But the intent is we're not losing parking count from what you have at the minimum. And ideally, we're going to try to add some spaces.
If you had 200 people come to a meeting here, how many parking spaces do you have to accommodate that?
Pat, I'm going to let you answer this one.
Of course you are. So parking has always been a premium at this location. And when we submitted the grant, one of the things we did is we approached the school committee. And as those of you familiar with this area know, you can walk 2 blocks up the street and the Jones School is on your right on Walnut. We've been talking, so the school committee wrote a agreement letter with us that we can use that for evenings and Saturdays, off school hours, as overflow parking. And we have been doing that for years. They've been very good partners in that. We've been working with the town engineer who's on our building committee, Mark Tisdale, and the DPW. They have a long-range plan to do new sidewalks from Lincoln Street through the center of town, past the library to Sumner. And I think that might be within the next 2 years' planning budget. So that will give us added new sidewalks on the front of the building, and we have requested that they consider putting in more light, better lighting, street lighting, and a sidewalk on the library side of Walnut Street going up to the Jones. So those things are in the planning stage. A couple weeks ago, we had a parking design meeting with the engineering department, and they came up with really a whole new way of looking at the new parking lot. And they are very excited about some potential options there, but we're still working that through. So we're very aware that parking is a premium, and we are working on it. We go in front of the Planning and Zoning Board in a couple of weeks. We have Faxon Park across the street. There's parking in front on Park Street on both sides. If you go up Walnut and take a left on Capon, that's one way. You can park on there on Capon on the right-hand side. It's a challenge. We're hoping that anytime we have, I would love to have a guaranteed 150 or 200 people at a program. We get 50 to 80 on average in this space, but we have had children's programs where there's been over 100. And generally what people do is they just park and walk, but those programs are at night or on Saturdays. And so that does give us the Jones School option. Any other questions about parking? Well, I just want it while I'm talking, because otherwise Tony can, go ahead.
I was just wondering, if you said that you probably won't get 200 people, should there be some sort of a divider in that room so that you could accommodate two separate groups at one time?
We had talked about that, actually.
With a portable...
Sorry, there was some early discussion about the ability to subdivide, and actually there's a fairly easy way that one can do that. But at the moment...
Not as a permanent...
No, as a folding wall situation. At the moment, Also due to, frankly, budgetary challenges. We are working to maintain the budget that we've been charged with, and that the town is willing to spend, and that the grant is allotted to us. It is, perfectly honest, it is tight. I think we're doing very well, especially in this current bidding climate. I don't know if you know, but it's extraordinarily busy right now, in and around not just here, but certainly Boston, other areas. Contractors are extraordinarily busy, which means, unfortunately, which is good for the contracting world, but it also means that the bidding climate is not as favorable from a monetary standpoint because there's so much work that people are able to do. So that means when they're doing jobs, they're raising their rates because it's just, there's just too much work, frankly. So in one way, that's the bane of having a strong economy, which is, I guess that's the balance you weigh. So in short answer is, yes, it could be done. Would that be able to be done? I think that's one of the considerations that at the moment we're not showing it that way, but if in the future that was a consideration, it would probably be very straightforward to be able to do that.
I'm sorry.
Might be for me.
Forget this.
All right. Back when I was in college last century, I took a music appreciation course, and the library had a listening area where there'd be you could get earphones or headphones and plug it in. Is that done in municipal libraries at all? No.
Speak to it.
There's two things to that. We actually have headphones at the desk that people borrow all the time when they want to listen to music at the computers now, or if they're doing an interactive training, or we have Mango, an online language database. So for all those things, people borrow headphones and they just sit and do it. They're just in their own little world. When we started our design back in '06, music listening rooms were actually a thing, but they have kind of gone by the wayside with handheld devices that can carry, thousands of titles and very portable headphones. So that was in our 2009 design, the preliminary conceptual design. We actually did talk about having like a listening room, and then that went away. The same thing with reference. We had 5,000 square feet of our preliminary conceptual design dedicated to reference books, which we have no need for now. They're not even printing new reference books on certain topics because they change so fast and we can get everything online. And Google has answered a lot of people's questions, so they call us less for a reference question. So, technology has transferred some of the needs to different things, but we are adjusting by offering more downloadable ebooks, music, magazines. We have e-magazines, all sorts of things that are more electronic based. So that answers that.
So as far as so there's no reference room per se?
There really isn't. We used to have a dedicated reference section of the library. And if you go down there now, you will see a lot of empty shelves because it's not really good to hang on to material that's out of date, and we can't buy new material because they're just not publishing it in paper form.
Will there still be a reference librarian?
Yes, actually, all of us that have a master's in library science were trained to be reference librarians, but we have all had to continue our training to figure out the new ways of finding information and determining what information is true information and what is fake information, which has become the latest thing. So, there's a lot of challenges to all that, but all I'm saying about the reference collection is we were able to reduce some of our square footage from the preliminary design because the needs changed because of technology.
So, for example, in both the lower level in both the main level and the upper level, there are these areas here, for example, which will have computer workstations. So they will have physical computers scattered throughout the library, so one can come up to it and basically enter, and you can type in Google or whatever, but it allows you to do that in areas here. For instance, you can see a large bank of areas. And then, of course, the whole building will be wireless, so people will have the ability to connect into Wi-Fi, can go doing on their own devices. Yes?
I'm sorry I was late, but I wondered if you mentioned the timeline for all of this, putting aside the parking.
Tom, do you want to answer that?
Tom, I'll let you. Thomas is basically also the owner's project manager, so I'll let you.
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Gatzunis. I'm from Daedalus Projects, and we're the owner's project managers. Excuse me. We are anticipating going out to bid on this project this spring, and then it will be a 16-month construction project. So the fall of next year, or 2018, excuse me, fall of 2018 is when we'll be back in the library.
So we won't, is the library still going to be used, or have you found another place to?
We are actively working on and in negotiations right now, so I can't tell you where the location is, but there will be a temporary library. All of the services, all the services will be provided, but all of the programs may not be provided in the same building. We definitely will not be in this building. The amount of work that's being done here prohibits really us from being in the building while the construction is happening.
Okay, looking at, if I may, looking at the second level, I noticed the men's room and ladies' room. I know the lines are not equal usually. Is this,
Yes.
they have double the?
Yes. Yeah, you're very observant. Yes, that actually is what's happening here. Yes, the women's have more facilities than the men.
There's a book and media drop-off in the back, if I recall. Maybe that should be the first floor.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would be quite a jump.
There's two book drops.
There's two book drops. And this is, by the way, this is my colleague, Aaron Udy, who is actually the project architect who's at these bi-weekly meetings, so he's really the go-to guy in the details. But yeah, there are two book drop locations.
Currently, it's a book drop-off at this library. Is it going to be media as well?
Yeah, we'll have 2 slots.
All right. Back to the front area, second floor periodicals. Currently, I believe there's a cage for older, more valuable magazines and so forth.
So the cage will be gone, and we won't, and we won't, we won't be, we've designed a small historic room on the second floor, sort of, yeah, right there. And that will be climate controlled, and any of the historic material that we currently keep in the cage, like census and old town documents, although we are not obligated to be the official holder of town documents, the town is responsible for that. We do keep all the town meeting reports and a lot of genealogy documentation. So if people want to come and do research, all of that information will be in the historic room. They can sign up to use that and stay in there and do their research. And the material, hopefully, that we do have that's somewhat historic will last longer. We have a lot of stuff in the Stoughton Historical Society, which was the original library, and that has just a wealth of information as well.
Okay.
So.
In the back of what would be this room, are there going to be any windows? Because you've got a wall that you have access to. There's no bathrooms or anything in the way.
If you go in those bathrooms now, or go outside and look at the back of the building, I think there's 4 high windows.
They're tall, but there is light, and they will be there coming into the space. Yes.
Okay. Your diagram of this room had seats set up like a theater.
Yeah.
Are these fixed seats?
Yeah.
Or,
Just exactly like you see here.
Okay.
Except more comfortable seats.
It's a more comfortable version.
Window shades. We saw, I guess that's going down to the first floor where people will be sitting by a window. And I gather you'll have the 3M film or whatever to reduce the heat. Yeah. But sometimes there's going to be glare that might not work with.
Yeah, no, those are very important questions. What we're actually doing is that we're enhancing a couple of things. One, in terms of the exterior, so there's going to be solar shade devices here on the large windows. They basically are going to be light shelves. In other words, these are going to be projecting elements, probably about 1 foot, 14 inches in depth, and they basically deflect the sun. So especially in the summertime, when the most heat gain occurs, we're basically trying to reduce the heat gain into the space above. And absolutely right, the glass itself will be highly energy efficient with high R value to also mitigate the heat gain, also reflectivity, and there will be window treatment inside too, which will be basically shade mechanisms, mecho shades we call them, which will also help to control the light. And in the wintertime, of course, when you actually want more light coming into it, the virtue is that with these kind of what we call these light shelves, allows more light to penetrate in, because one of the critical things for also library use is a controlled way of having natural light in the space. The more you have the ability to do that, also less reliant you are on artificial lighting, which also reduces energy demands, because if we do that and allow natural light to penetrate deeper into the building, that's actually better. And of course the lighting itself is all going to be state-of-the-art LED lighting. Everything is LED. There was a question over here. Yes, ma'am.
I'm wondering if you could just explain a little about your landscaping
Sure.
that you'll be having around the
Yeah.
library.
And also a little hard to see in this night rendering. There will be enhanced landscaping at the front here. There will be new planting. The trees, unfortunately, that existed in the front will not remain due to the construction activity, which is going to be very disruptive and will not allow us. But there's going to be all new landscaping treatment all along here, here, and here. Those existing trees on the side. We're going to try to preserve what we can. That's the intent, not to take trees down if we don't have to. And then the parking lot itself, to the extent that when we finally figure out how that's going to be reconfigured, and not only will it get new stripe painting and all of that on the actual surface, but again, edges along here, there will be a new sign for the library that will exist, so it actually makes it clear that this is the Stoughton Public Library, for those who may not be from around here, and everything else that we can do that we're basically going to do. We do have limited resources again at the moment. But landscaping is also one of those things, frankly, a community in the future can enhance down the road. So for instance, even if you don't do everything you want to do right now, coming back later and saying we want to do more enhanced landscaping, that is absolutely possible in the future, so that we are basically planning for what we can do, but we are going to enhance the landscaping in the front and the sides.
And that window treatment, is there going to be something to get heat out of them into the library in the wintertime?
So basically, again, the way this works is, as those of you who understand how the sun moves from the season to season, wintertime the sun is a lot lower. It goes much shorter, but when it's lower, the sunlight comes in this way. In summertime, it's more this way. So in the winter, we want actually the sunlight to penetrate into the space because we want the warmth of the sun to come in. So this allows that to happen.
So there's no air circulating in that area that probably gets...
No, we don't have what we call like a double window wall system. We don't have that kind of system, no.
Okay. Carpet, I guess that would be on all the floors.
Yes.
What's the expected life of those?
30 years, I think.
Yeah, and the carpeting is, yes, mostly in most of the areas, both for sound area, but the center area walkway here, this is going to be a tile, which will be much more sort of maintenance-free and allows the library in this whole section through here up to the staircase to have more hard surface, because that's where a lot of traffic occurs, where people are moving back and forth. But everything else is intended to be carpeted throughout.
Going to the outside, is it going to be bike rack? Are there going to be bike?
Yes, there will be. They're actually required, and again, it's a little hard to see, but just behind this tree, there's a number of bike racks.
In the shelves, I guess going to the first floor, the stacks, I understand, well, those aren't high. I'm looking at it there, I figured maybe they'd go up higher. But so somebody in a wheelchair could reach the top shelf?
So the way this works is that libraries have certain book counts that are basically mandated and dictated by the program. So all the layouts for these libraries where you ever see a bookshelf, these are actually very carefully calibrated in terms of the capacity. Now, there are areas that are going to basically range from 3 to 5 to 7 shelves high. Most of the lower shelving, of course, in the children's area, will be lower. The young adult is kind of a mixture of low to mid-height. And then the more compact and dense stack, like the adult, these are all 7 shelves high, because we want to maximize the ability to have collections there. What happens, though, is that in a book count, by the way the library calculates it, even though you have a 7-shelf high stack, they generally allocate not counting the bottom shelf and the top shelf. Why? Because they're building in the ability to grow the collection. This is a normative process in planning libraries. So the first shelf and the top shelf actually are not counted in the count, even though the capacity is there. Basically, you can add upwards of 15%. As far as your question about the handicap accessibility to access books, now, of course, they have the ability at the level that they can reach. Now, if they're going to try to reach a book on the 7th, 6th shelf, probably cannot do that, in which case then people and on staff on hand can assist. But we don't have the whole library at only 3 shelves high. Otherwise, this library would be 2.5 times the size that it is. Yes, sir.
Getting back, came back just in time. It's my understanding that the town has a lot of material that should be stored and protected that isn't. First of all, is that correct or not correct?
I am not privy to that information. The town has, the way the public records laws work, and you can talk to the town clerk about this to confirm, but in general, the creator of the record ultimately is responsible for holding it for whatever the term, if we're just talking public records. If we're talking, payroll and bills paid and those kinds of things, taxes. And the town has several locked spaces in town hall, like safes, big walk-in safes, where they store documents that are protected from flood and fire and all that. I really don't know what other kind of documentation they would have that would be considered valuable that has to be protected.
Nor do I, but let me interrupt you.
Okay.
In looking for space a few years ago, I came upon a room or two of stuff in the bottom of one of the buildings, just in piles.
Yeah.
And I guess my understanding was that some of that might, in fact, be worth preserving. And I was just wondering if at least on a temporary basis, the room that you have your protected material in, if there's another place that you could put more of that material if necessary.
Well, certainly, so the question was, I don't know if people can hear this, was if the town has valuable material that isn't being stored properly, is there another place to put it, such as in the historical room at the library, that is going to be controlled for humidity and temperature controlled? The way I would answer that is to say, if the town has valuable information that it needs to preserve, the first step, which is what we did 10 or 12 years ago, is you ask the New England Preservation Society people, and actually Howard Hansen would be a good resource for talking to about this as well. But you have them come in and they assess what you have. We have a century worth of the Stoughton Chronicle and whatever was published before that, papers that are out of business now, and we have them in their original form and then wrapped in paper that wasn't acid-free. So those things, when you unwrap them to look at them now, just turn to crumble. Because they just weren't preserved. Luckily, most of those documents over time, since the 1980s, newspapers and magazines and different journals have been microfilming their information so that they have a record of it. So a lot of that stuff can be found online when you go back. So to answer your question, the first step would be for the town to have somebody come in from a preservationist come in and assess what we have, see what really needs to be kept, and if things are starting to get friable or close to deteriorating, they really need to be scanned. And, there's a lot of grants out there for scanning projects. Some towns have their own archivist. Hingham, I think, just hired one a couple of years ago. Plymouth has a department. Sandwich, Mass. has a department of an archival department in the library because they have, they have documentation from the Mayflower. They are our history. Stoughton doesn't have that kind of documentation, but certainly anything that people come across that if it's determined to be historically significant, it should at the very least be scanned if it hasn't been in acid-free, environment for the last 50 years. So I'm sorry to hear that there is stuff sitting somewhere that may be valuable that's not being protected, but you really can't just, it has to be assessed. That would be the first step.
Thank you.
I think at one time you had a microfiche machine.
We still do, and we probably will put that in the historic room because we have quite a large microfilm collection that is mostly newspapers. We have the New York Times, the Globe, some of these newspapers that don't get printed anymore. We have the old archive, the old microfilm. So that's right, the Boston Post. So if you wanted to do genealogy research, certainly there's lots of locations online that you can do it. But if you're looking for somebody who it was in the paper that they were born or their obituaries in the paper, we probably have the microfilm back at least 100 plus years. Any other questions?
Thank you very much for coming. I know this is, I think we believe is a very exciting opportunity for the library, and we hope you feel the same way for the community. I think we really enjoyed working with folks here and learning a lot about what your needs are. So I hope you feel that what we're showing you today is starting to address a lot of really the vision that you actually have for your own community. And thank you very much for taking the time and having a conversation with us. We appreciate that.